want to tell you a story about my first job. So my first job actually was with a guerrilla army. My first job was working in Tigray, which is in northern Ethiopia. And it was in the late 1980s, and it was a time of really terrible famine, like all the sort of Band-Aid and all of that was happening to feed people in the place where I was working. And I had to get to my work illegally. It took 3 nights. I had to fly to Sudan, and then I had to travel in riverbeds by night. And then as the dawn came, the kind of Russian MiGs would fly overhead. And it seemed like the whole world was moving. You know, there'd be all these people on the road with these famished cattle and their children by their side. And so one night, as we kind of like hurtled around these bends, they did these handmade roads, these underground hospitals. I mean, what the guerrilla army achieved was really amazing. But I said to my boss, so like, where are all the people going? He said to me, why are you asking? These are just the simple peasants. So I was really shocked because I was like 20 years old and I thought, oh my goodness, like I've come halfway around the world really to work with the peasants, as I saw it. You know, like the work was about the people. And so anyway, I've carried on doing similar work. I've worked half my life in Africa, Latin America, and the last 15 years I've been working in the UK. And of course, like most people don't talk like my boss taught. Like in England, we have all these programs about personalization. We have all these public reports that say putting people first. So it seems like it's all about the people. But I think really what I've learned is that what my boss then said, which is something that is not kind of politically correct to say and nobody actually says, is actually the way that most of us, including myself, have worked through the 20th century, which was to think like, let's not worry too much about those people. Let's get our programs right. Let's get our institutions right. Let's get everything working properly, and then change is going to happen. So it's kind of like you know, working like this. And actually, probably all of you here, because you're practitioners, realize this much before I did. But you know, I've realized through all the work I've done in communities, in Britain and elsewhere, is that that is completely the wrong way to think. Talk about turning things upside down. The first thing we have to do is invert the telescope and start from people themselves, from their perspective, in their homes, on their sofas, and not just with individual people, but most importantly with people, their families, people, their friends, and these horizontal connections. So starting to think in this kind of connected way. And so really, I think that that is the basic idea behind relational welfare. It's just that simple. It's about thinking how we can work horizontally and how we can amplify and focus on the connections that already exist between people. And I think that the most interesting thing for me over the last 10 years' work, which is what I want to talk about, and really surprised me, was that this kind of way of working does really work, even with people who are living in the most difficult circumstances in life. And so working in this way was how I met Ella, one of the mothers who, it's not her real name, but I talk about. And I'd already been working for some time when one of the leaders of a city in Britain came to me and said, look, I know about your work, I've seen work you've done in other areas, but here in this city, it's quite a prosperous city, we have a number of families that despite all the programs we have and all the best interventions we have are not progressing. And is there any way you could come and think about how we could apply this work in this situation? So I don't know, some of you, I gave a TED talk and I talk about the experience of Ella. Some of you might have seen it. But when I met this mother called Ella, she was very, very stuck. And she had lived in crisis for the 40 years of her life. Her childhood was crisis. She really hadn't known anything else. She'd been abused when she was very young. She'd lived with a whole series of abusive partners. Her children had a whole range of difficulty. None of them were in mainstream schools anymore. They were out of school. They were suffering, you know, from everything from sort of, well, all kinds of issues of mental health. One of her children had been removed by social services because the family were in such a terrible state. And Ella said to me, you know, in great pain, the thing is that I'm just living the same life that my mother lived before me. I don't really see a way out of this situation. But when I met Ella, I don't know kind of what's, I don't know, is this gonna, what's gonna happen? Maybe nothing's going to happen. Maybe I need to go backwards or it's gone to sleep. So this is her house, actually. But so when I met Ella, there were 73 services in the city where she lived, run out of 24 different departments. And pretty much everybody in those services knew this family. And these are the number of workers this is her actual family, and this is the number of workers in her life. And at the same time, the government was saying, this was 2009, that they think it costs £250,000, I don't know, what's that in euros, like 400,000 euros a year to work with the family and support these workers around the family. And yet, what we were seeing was that none of this was making any difference. Whoa, I'm going the wrong way. So with the team, we rented a house on the estate where a number of these families live, and we started to work with 12 families. And this has been a really common theme to the way that we work, which is just the same really as the story of the guerrilla army I told you, which is really trying to understand from the perspective of people themselves what's actually going on in their lives. And so we spent time going out in the dark, looking for children after dark, shopping, going to claim unemployment benefits, doing all the things that the families do, witnessing the loan sharks coming, sitting there on the sofa when the police officer, the social worker, the home tutor, the housing officer, the fire officer, when all these people come to call, we were there. And at the same time, and this is what you were referring to, we tracked the frontline workers. So Ryan is the name that I've given to the social worker who works with Ella's son Tom, who's 12. And what we saw in Ryan's life, and this is actually a typical pattern, I've seen this in healthcare work and other work that I've tracked in the UK, is that 74% of Ryan's time is spent filling out forms. It's spent on administration. It's basically spent on a system to manage risk, to make sure that nothing goes wrong. And then 14% of time is spent actually in meetings with colleagues, discussing the forms and discussing their forms with them, which leaves 12% of the time to actually work with Tom. But for me, really, because I'm not a social worker, and because I know that everybody who's in social work is in there for the best possible reasons, the most shocking thing to me was that even in that 12% time, no relationship can be formed. Because when Ryan comes to speak with Tom, he's got his form and he's saying, so, when did you last go to school? Okay. When did you last drink? Have you been smoking weed? And so everything is driven by the need for information, and it's a kind of like, we're not having a conversation, it's just a way of extracting more data and more information for the forms. And so, of course, it's not surprising that nothing changes. I keep going backwards, sorry.
I think you have it upside down.
Ah! So I'm going to talk to you all later about the importance of technology. So it's good you put me right. Thank you. Thank you. So then the other thing is, because of where I'm standing with the light, I can't really see what's here. So it's confusing for me, but hopefully I'm more or less going in the right direction. So basically, we asked the leaders of all the organisations, of all those services, to come together in a room and pick a family, which was just like Ella's family, that they knew, and to begin to plot round the room all the interventions. And this actually, we did a 30-year period, but this shows an 18-year period. And we began to plot every single person and every single time the state had intervened in their lives. And what we see here is that, as we learned from the frontline workers themselves, that none of these interventions are part of a general plan. So nobody here is working together with an idea of where this family is going to. They're just doing the best job they can in their own service, trying to deliver something from that service. But when we plotted it round the walls of the room, and it stretched like you're doing here, but like right round the walls of the room, there was a moment of complete breakdown, actually. Because I think one of the things about this is that this is really difficult work, and so in a way you kind of develop a shell and you just keep going and you don't think about the bigger picture, because it's one of the ways of being able to do the work day after day after day. But there was a moment of breakdown, and everybody in the room said, what on earth are we doing? Like, we didn't go into this work to work like this. We have to find a different way to work. And so that moment really of complete emotional breakdown was also a moment where something very different could start to happen. So let me see what we're going to, so I'm still going back to front now because I've got used to going back to front. So what we basically said to the city leaders was, look, you say, and the national government, that you're spending £250,000 a year on this family, 400,000 euros or whatever, but actually you're not spending a single penny on this family. What you're spending on is a system that's keeping this family actually stuck right in the middle of the crisis. And if the family has a bigger crisis, you do a bit more, and then if the family kind of stabilizes for a bit, you go backwards, and then you just wait till the family has another crisis. But this is not a developmental way of working. None of this money is actually spent on something with a plan that is about change in that family's life. In fact, in this city, we asked them, first of all, could they introduce us to a family where they had managed to bring about change and the whole family had left the books of the welfare services, and in fact they couldn't introduce us to a family. And these were brilliant workers. This is about good people in bad systems. This is not about a critique of the workers. So we said, okay, to the leaders, we want you to ask everybody who's intervening in these families' lives, please, to stand back, and we're going to ask the families to lead the change. And the first thing will be, is we're going to recruit a team, the families are going to recruit a team, and they're going to ask people to come forward and work with them in a different way. And so our promise was, anybody who works with us, they can spend 80% of their time working with the families and 20% on administration. A big story about the work we've done has been using technology in different ways to kind of make different things happen. And so people queued around the block, and actually we've taken this work since to other cities, and it's always the same story. Of course it's the same story, because none of us want to fill out forms. We all want to do, you know, I'm the same, we all want to do real work. And so we asked Ella and another mother to be on an interview panel and to interview the workers. And so they had a question, and they said to the first person who came through the door, so when my son starts kicking me, what are you going to do? And so the first person said, well, I know the regulations of my agency, so I'm going to look for the door, I'm going to leave very carefully, and when I'm outside, I'm going to call my supervisor and tell them what's happening. And so the mother said, I can't swear because I don't know any Danish swear words, and anyway, maybe culturally I probably shouldn't. But anyway, the mothers, they swore, and they were like, you know, get out of here, you are the system. And the next person who came in was a policeman, and he said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be pretty frightened, but I'm going to tackle your son to the ground, and then I'm going to ask you what we should do next. And they said, thank you, you're on. So again and again, we've seen this pattern, and it's really striking. So what the families are doing is they're choosing workers who they feel are authentic, who talk to them on a level like human beings, who they feel will be with them all the way along the journey. But really critically also, they feel will be, it's like tough love, they feel will challenge them. They weren't looking for people either, which was interesting to me. I'm not from this field. They weren't looking for people that would just give them an easy ride. So all the families chose a team. We ended up with a team of about 10 or 12 workers from very different disciplines. And then we trained the team really, which was about, we're not wrapping existing interventions around the family. We're just sitting with the family and we're listening. And in the first stages, we're waiting for the families to decide what they really want to do next. And that first phase can take 6 months, but it's always worth investing in that first phase. And in fact, there's only one place we've gone to where this program hasn't worked. And it has been actually where the municipality, they just didn't trust that the most difficult families would come forward. And so they pushed families to us, and it didn't work. And I think that, you know, I was saying again about inversions. One of the characteristics I have of British welfare services is that we put all the energy right in at the beginning. You know, when you first turn up for an unemployment benefit or whatever it is, like all the attention is on you. And then we judge whether you've succeeded or failed, and we're on to the next person because the pressures on the system are so big. But if we see it like a relationship, that's a completely mad way of doing it. It's like being on the first date with somebody and beginning to ask them for all their personal information and kind of getting, I mean, it's not going to work. So one of the things we do with our work is we go really slowly at the beginning. It's all about relationships. It's all about the families leading and making their plan. And then once that's in place, actually the work begins to move quite fast. And that's what happened with these families, that very early on, big changes happened in these families' lives. Within the first 6 months, we'd stopped evictions. We had children back in school. One of my first memories is on the estate. Somebody came up to me with Tom, and they were like, thank you so much for moving Tom off this estate. I said, oh, he's not off the estate, he's in school. And really nobody could believe it. But this won us a space to begin to slowly, slowly develop the program. Of course, you know, I don't know how many of you here, for instance, are social workers. Who here is a social worker? Oh, only 2 people. So what you know, of course, is that in people's lives, things go backwards as well as forwards. So the path is not a smooth path. It's always a complicated path. And one of the things has been, I think, successful in the programme is that we can see when it's time to kind of wrap an expensive intervention in somebody's life. Maybe somebody is ready for psychotherapy or something that there's not a lot of in the British welfare state, but then we know it's time that that person can make use of that programme. And so what's happened as we've kind of worked organically is we've called it the LIFE programme. And what started just testing things out, I mean, the first thing we did was we gave families some money and we said, what would you like to do with the money? And, you know, some families, some families went out for dinner, McDonald's, they hadn't sat down. One group of mothers got together and said, we need to learn to listen differently. All of these things, we have a website called participal.net, and you can find all of this work and lots of evaluations of this programme actually on the website if you want to read more about it. Some took the money and one woman started a social enterprise, several did, but hers was particularly successful. So people began to kind of experiment. And over time, we built up this 4-stage programme. So the first stage is invitation. We invite families to participate. So I don't know how it is here in Denmark, but the mothers that I'm working with, they usually have 2 mobile phones. One is for the family, and the other is for social workers, police, like to keep the state away. Because they're so frightened that if they talk about what's really going on in their lives, that what the state will do is remove their children. So they've built this incredible wall between themselves and the state. And so the invitation stage is really important to say that you can invite me in, but I'm not coming in unless you invite me in. And sometimes, you know, this takes somebody from my team sitting on the doorstep for 6 months, sitting there waiting and saying, I'm here for you. But what's really interesting is that over time, families have told their neighbours to come to our programme. So we've had, no hiding behind mobile phones. People are actually coming into our programme. And the next stage is Aspirations. So that's working with families on what they'd like to do and trying something out. And then when that's successful, building that further to the next stage, Generally, families want to start with something quite small, but that's great because then the confidence is built, it's successful, and moving to the next stage. Building the capabilities to really grow, and this is something I want to come back to as well. I mean, for me, relationships, it's part of a broader framework about a welfare state and a model for the 21st century that is around cultivating people's capabilities. I say that we need to move from managing needs to basically fostering people's capabilities. And then the third stage is moving into opportunities. So with our families, that's moving into work, moving into education, beginning to lead balanced lives and happy, thriving lives outside of the system. And so what I say really is that the most important thing for me about this transformation is that all the same people are involved in this transformation. So there's no worker working now that wasn't already working in the welfare state. All the skills, we have all the skills we need. And there's no family that wasn't already creating a huge problem for the welfare state. But what has changed is the relationship between those workers and the families. The fact that there's a space to listen, the fact that there's space that everybody is working together. There's no person with the program of their whatever their sector is. There's no pace that, well, you're in this program for 6 months and we should be on stage 3 by now. It is all led by the families, and it's all about that relationship between the families. So I can't remember what's coming next. So the other thing is that I didn't bring it because I wasn't sure it would work, but we made a little film which you can also see on our website, which was also very powerful, because what we also said to frontline workers across Britain is, actually in this work, we are asking the families to make the most powerful change of their lives. They haven't ever known another way. And if we're asking that of families, we have to make the same changes ourselves in the way that we work. And so one of the really important things of our work, I think, is a concept of reflective practice, of not only having these teams, but also putting somebody, usually somebody with a psychoanalytic background, around the team so that there's this place to have a regular reflection on what's going on. And I think that without that reflective practice, it's not possible to sustain these relationships over time, because the work is so hard. The things my team see on a daily basis, I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with it, but they really see horrific things. And it's hard to remain open and to keep non-judgmental relationships unless you also have a space for reflection. So I think that that's really important. So the programme, and the other thing is, so the first programme started in a town called Swindon, and 2 months ago I went back to Swindon. We started in 2009, and the same team is there, which also is really incredible, I think, because generally also we have very high levels of sickness and very high levels of staff turnover in these jobs in Britain because it's so hard to work in the systems. So where we've changed the systems, we've also had stability. In another municipality, they've taken the cultural principles and they've scaled them now through all their services and through they have even the same values in the way that they recruit their administrators in the municipality, which is a part of Manchester, one of our biggest cities, which I think is really interesting. So I don't know, how am I doing? Am I doing okay? Are you sure? Okay. Yeah. So we've done work on unemployment, we've done work on health, we've done youth work, and we've also done work on ageing. And so I just thought I would give you another example of applying similar principles, because our work is on a spectrum. Some of our work is more like the LIFE programme, where we're working with existing systems and transforming the systems, and some of it is much more rooted in communities and isn't really a service in a way that anybody might understand a typical service. And our first piece of work was around older people, because, well, we have a demographic crisis in Britain. I'm sure that you do have one here. Everybody has this demographic crisis. And of course, when William Beveridge designed our welfare state, I'm trying to do this so I don't actually take my microphone off. Sorry, I'm now going to be on the video trying to take my jacket off without taking the microphone off. Am I doing okay? Of course, when we designed our welfare state, William Beveridge, he had no idea that ageing was going to be such a very, very big challenge. And I'll go back a pace. And we have, in Britain, this incredible language about time bombs, and I mean every single day we have an article on in the news, whichever kind of news channel you listen to, about an older person dying in a bad way in hospital. The fact is that our welfare system simply can't cope, and also that we think this crisis has to be solved by the existing welfare systems, which is never going to happen. So I mean, in Britain, 80% of the wealth in Britain is held in the hands of people over 60. Of course, that wealth is not evenly distributed. We've got very wealthy people. I mean, we're very unequal. We're not like here, so we have a very unequal society. But nonetheless, we said, look, it makes much more sense to start where the resources, which is not just money, actually, but of course knowledge and everything else. Let's start there. Let's start with older people themselves, and let's think about what we can do. So I just have an image, so also it's not. But so basically, we spent time in Southwark in South London, which is a municipality. It's about the same size as this city, actually, 300,000 people, working initially with 70 older people and their families. Exactly the same thing. Playing bingo, which is kind of a game that, I don't know, do you have bingo here? Play bingo, yeah. Sunday lunches, going shopping. I mean, I think that the ones that are PDF don't have all the slides I need, but never mind. But basically, just getting underneath the issues. We use a design methodology, and we use a lot of visual work, because one of the things we find is that, you know, it takes 3 months for people to tell you what they really think. I mean, when we started this work, everybody thought we were actually part of the municipality. So it took 3 months of everybody saying to us, oh, please, could you improve this service, and could you improve that service? And then finally they realized that we had absolutely no power, and there was no point telling us about what was wrong with the municipality. They might as well tell us about how they really wanted to live their lives. And basically people said they wanted 3 things. So they wanted a way to take care of small practical things. If the light bulb is gone, I don't want to wait till I fall over the ladder in the dark. I want somebody to come and help me change the light bulb. People told us they wanted to be socially connected. Now, we have got lots of befriending services in the UK, which means that you're a charity and you go and have tea with somebody to be kind to them. And people said, you know, we don't want anybody to be kind to us. I want to make a friend now in my 50s in the same way that I made a friend in my 20s. And I want to do the same in my 90s. I want to meet people that I actually like and I want to be with and share my interests. And we want you to help us do this, because maybe we've just spent a lot of time taking care of a partner who's died, we've lost our confidence, we feel isolated, and we want to make some new friends. And then people also said, oh, well, we want to live a life with purpose. We've got 20, 30, 40 more years to live now we're retired. How can we're already thinking about this, how can we reinvent our lives in a different way? And could you help us to do that? What's coming next? So that basically is what we did. We invented a service that we call Circle here on the left. And it basically what it does is it still 10 years on, does exactly the same thing. It provides people with practical support and friendship. Actually, what we did was we also employed life coaches. When people told us they wanted to live in a different way, we said, oh, well, let's have some life coaches. And then our members met life coaches. They were like, actually, we don't want to we don't want to talk about it in that way. Thank you very much. So we said, okay, we don't need the life coaches. But this is what we do. I mean, I'm sure lots of you in this room work in the same way, that I mean, when we started this, having heard it, we got all the older people back into our tiny studio in South London. We designed the programme. We took money off people, had a phone line in our office and a couple of handymen, and we just started taking money from people, very low subscriptions, and started providing the service. And then we've grown it and grown it to 10,000 members, literally just by learning on the job what's really working, what's not working, and continuing to iterate it. So what we do is we have a piece of technology which basically links people together with shared interests and tells us in real time if people need support. And so we're providing actual practical services, and we're providing opportunities for people to socialise together. And people pay a low subscription level for the service, but people also put time on the platform. So one of the important things, of the underlying themes of our work, is rethinking business models. And I don't know how it is here, but in Britain we have this, we have these real barriers between private money and state money. So to give a very good example is, if I need to look after my grandmother, I have to look after her at home until I've exhausted all my money. She then goes into a care home, and then they don't want me to help because now she's in the care home system. So we've really tried to kind of, in all our work, to make sure that everything remains very open and fluid. So in Circle, you pay, you can be a volunteer, you can put time, you can put money. It's like a completely blended, and we also kind of work with the municipalities, as you'll see, to put their resource on the system. But for me, the most interesting thing, this is a woman in blue called Belinda, and for me, one of the most interesting things is that although the circles that we've started and we've spread them around the country, some have been more successful than others, which is something I can talk about in questions afterwards if you're interested, but 10 years on, the circles are still providing the same core support, practical, social. But what's happened over time is that the relationships that people build in the circle are beginning to take out the practical support. So the story of Belinda is that she was very lonely when she joined, and she had become very isolated. She didn't know anybody. We can't just set these up. We say it's not like gym membership. We have to curate it. We have to encourage people to come to the first lunch, go with them, think about who they'd like to meet. It's quite intensive in the first stages. But after a year or so, Belinda went into hospital for a hip operation, and the person who runs her circle called her up and said, right, you're going into hospital. How can I help you when you come out? What do you need? And she said, oh, I don't need anything. She said, oh, no, because, I've met, these two people. They're going to do the shopping and the cooking. I've met this person, this friend through Circle is going to do the gardening. This person is going to be there when I get back. This person is going to pick me up from hospital. So increasingly, kind of in the way that we've built these circles, in having a very broad community from people in their 50s through to their 90s, we've been able to curate these relationships that take care of things and that people can organise for themselves. What's really important is the technology, because in ageing, in the traditional services, there are two very expensive factors. One is buildings, and the other is things like minivans to get people around. So what we have is a really simple CRM system, a kind of customer management system that we've hacked ourselves, and basically allows in every locality 3 people to support a membership of up to 2,000 in each locality. Because on this system is who's living where, what do they want? Oh, I know I can call Jacob for a quick lift to the hospital. I know that this is going on over here. So basically we can coordinate in real time everything that's going on with very, very little money. We don't have any minivans. It's all lifts. We don't have any buildings. If we're going to do something, it'll be in somebody's home or it'll be in a community building we know we can use. So this has completely turned on its head the kind of economics of how we would normally provide a system for older people. What can I say? I can talk about evaluations, I suppose. I mean, I think the thing is that what we've done, I'll show you in a minute, is we've tracked the growth of capabilities and people's relationships. But we've also measured the pressure on existing services. So, for instance, in one of our localities, there's been a 70% drop in people visiting their GPs. This is the primary care doctors, where people were going to talk, basically, because they were isolated and they needed support.
Did you say 70?
Yes, yes. we've also had a significant, I can't bring the numbers to mind, but they're on the website, impact on hospital readmissions. Just because people used to be kind of taken out of hospital in an ambulance, there's nobody there to support them, they're back in within 24 hours. But by making sure that we have somebody there, and also that we can make sure that that person coordinates the other people like the community nurse and everybody that needs to come into the home, we've had a dramatic impact on hospital readmissions, which are one of the biggest costs that we've got at the moment in our hospital system. So the premise is really, really simple. The premise is, you know, we're going to make some relationships happen and some practical support. But I think that there's some kind of principles in this that I want to talk about. So the first one about this way of working is that all the models, the 1950s models we have in Britain are about scarcity, and they're about gatekeeping, which is the other reason that there's 80% in administration, because most people have to spend their time making sure you don't get through the gates, because especially right now in Britain, the need is so high compared to any of the possibility, now we've had so many cuts, it's even worse, of the state providing support. But what we've thought about is how can we design models that are abundant? And of course, relationships are abundant. I mean, the thing about Circle and all our models is that the more people who join, the stronger the model. The more people there are to help, to enjoy time with, to give their time. So we're really turning on its head the idea of how a service could be. The other thing is that it's about culture more than money. I can tell lots of stories about this. We were talking about it at Where's David on the way here, which is actually often very hard for government institutions that want to help us scale to understand. Because it's the relationships that are changing the lives. It's not actually about who's got cost. I mean, the government introduced a market system for family work. They said, oh, let's put money in the system. We're like, we don't need money in the system. There's plenty of money in the system. And there's plenty of brilliant people. What you need to do is allow those people to do the work that they actually know how to do. So it's about talking about these services in a way, if you look at a Circle website, that is about relationships all the way through, from the first point of contact to actually when somebody arrives in your home. It's about the digital, which I've talked about, the role of technology, but it's also about the kind of wider ecosystem. What is coming next? I haven't got this up. I'm sorry, I haven't got the...
Would you like the opportunity to open the right?
Well, it's really annoying. No, but I'm going to keep going, because obviously the ones I put in PDF, not all my slides are here, but it doesn't matter. But because the slide I want to show you is about the fact that what we do with our municipalities is something which I call the double contract. So when we start a Circle, what we say to them is, we want you to put in money to starting this, because you have to start it as if it's for everybody. You can't start with something really small or nobody will join. So put in money so that we can grow it to a level that membership is keeping it alive, but invest in the first years. But also do the double contract, which is, once we've got it up and running, we want you to think about how you can reinvent the services you offer in the municipality on our system. So we want you to think about how you're doing your daycare, how you're doing things like your hospital admissions. And we want you to integrate that with our system, because we can probably do it in a more relational way, basically a cheaper way, and a much better way. And it's been very, very interesting. We had one Circle that didn't survive at all, which was in a local authority that said they wanted to be the EasyJet Council of Britain. Does this metaphor have any? So yeah, so you understand what I mean. And so basically it was only about cost. And basically that Circle couldn't exist in a culture which was just about driving out money from the system. Even though it is driving out money from the system, that's not enough to keep it alive. The most successful example is where the local authority, the municipality, if you like, it's a city, small city, shared exactly the same vision. They took the idea of relationships, they took the idea of capabilities, and they made that. They said they wanted to be this capital in Britain. So then what we had was a shared culture, or at least, I mean, they were only just beginning, so it's not like all the services were operating in that way, but they had a vision of, within the municipality, moving in this way, and they had our practical service, and that enabled in really effective ways to integrate. That's where the GP visits have gone down in such a dramatic way, because a big vision in the municipality has met a practical example. I think often you can have a big vision in the municipality, but if you haven't got a practical example that you can show people, that you can begin to kind of, like a can opener, lever open the system, it's quite hard. So where you've got both, then really big change begins to happen. So when I started out 10 years ago with this 10-year experiment on services, I wrote this, you can see it, I wrote this document called Beveridge 4.0, because William Beveridge is the person who invented our welfare state. He wrote 3 reports. Actually, in the 3rd report, he said he'd made a terrible mistake and he'd left out people and their communities. And I thought that's where we're going to begin. So Beveridge 4. And also 0.0, because I think that the digital is so important, as I've said. It's like 10 pages long. If you're interested, you can go and read it on the website. But the really important part for me is about needs to capabilities. So it is really asking everywhere we go and every partnership we do, how can we stop managing people's needs and how can we foster a core set of capabilities? And some of you might be familiar with the capabilities approach. It has its roots in the work of the Nobel Prize-winning economist Amartya Sen and also the philosopher Martha Nussbaum. And what they say is that, particularly in the last, 20 years, but there's been a real focus on providing people with opportunity. We have this a lot. Our politicians talk a lot about opportunity for all, opportunities for hard-working families. The point is that most people who are kind of, on the lower half of our kind of, as I say, very divided society, don't have the capabilities to seize those opportunities. I mean, actually, as we've seen in our work with unemployment, they don't have the relationships to find the work they want. So there's no point talking about opportunities unless you're genuinely fostering people's capabilities to actually seize those opportunities. So our work is quite firmly rooted in this bigger philosophical model. And we took 4 capabilities in the work we've done, which is around meaningful work and learning, health and vitality, so physical health and inner vitality, community connections, which is both about being connected to your local community, but also thinking on a planetary level, because we can no longer design services that aren't, mindful of our fragile ecology. And fourthly, about relationships. And the reason I'm mentioning this is that as we've done 10 years of practice, we've really seen that relationships are the most important thing. It's like, the game of Jenga where you take things out and anything collapses of the wooden blocks. And what we realize is the one thing you can't take out is relationships. And we've got a system of measurement, actually, which tracks these. I'll show you in a minute. So relationships is the most important. But what I want to say to you all, because you're practitioners, is that I think it's really important to understand these relationships within this bigger philosophical thinking. Because I think if we just go out there and say, oh, we're going to kind of be relational with people, some of the problems we're coming up against, both in the systems themselves and also in people's lives, they're going to be quite difficult to kind of get traction on. I think it's really important to see relationships within this kind of bigger philosophical loop. So this is we use technology to measure. So in all our work, what we've done is we've said, are we saving you money if you give us money? We're pragmatic. We say, if you're running an aging service, tell me what are the main things in your existing system that you need to measure. I will outperform those. But then what's important to us is we begin to shift the system by measuring our own capabilities. So within Circle, for instance, these measures sit, this is just a dummy, but these measures sit on the piece of technology that's running Circle. This is also really important because we've been seeding enterprises in different parts of the country, some of them quite isolated who aren't, London's very centric. Everybody in London is kind of wanting to be part of a social enterprise or whatever, but if you go, further to some of the old industrial cities of the north, it's much harder to find people that are kind of interested in this work. Initially, of course, because of course everybody is interested really. But this helps us to also kind of help those people who are starting their own social enterprises to hold this relational culture. What you measure is what matters. So if we ask you to measure relationships, and we've got kind of good algorithms to do it, then we'll make sure that that stays central to the work.
Can I ask you a question? Are those activity measures as opposed to outcomes? Or?
Yes, they're activity measures. And so the relationship, we've got 2 levels of relationship, just to give you an example. So one is, are we connecting people to each other? And so let's say we give something and 30 people come, we'll say, well, we'll say we built 5 relationships, because like today I can't say I'm probably going to be lucky enough to talk to a few of you, but I'm not going to meet, sadly, most of you. So I can't say that I came here and I met all these people, because I didn't. So we've got to kind of find out who's really interacting. And then also what we have is we have an algorithm that sees that if we've met 4 times over the last month, then we've probably built a relationship. Because the other thing that, for instance, the first circle in Southwark, the leader of that circle, he's like, I'm not having any measurement, because like if I hire a film, I don't have somebody calling up afterwards going, hi, how do you feel? Do you feel better now you've watched the film? Like that's still a sort of very paternalistic. So we had to think, how can we kind of track? Because we want to keep learning and improving, but at the same time not make people feel. Of course, the other thing with relationships, with all of this, is it's like really a fraction, because as we see with the Belinda case, or we could use ourselves, if I become your friend, we probably do something twice a week without, you know, circle even knowing. So actually these are quite small measures, but that's fine. We're not in the business of, you know, we're just in the business of learning, not of saying, look at us, we're kind of magnificent. Okay, so before I get to relationships change our lives, well, I could go there, but I just wanted to say, I wanted to wrap up really by saying sort of some things that I feel are really important. So I feel that there are 3 reasons that we need to do this work, and I feel this in Britain. I'd be interested, we can have a discussion whether you think these things have resonance here. So the first thing I think that's really important is that we had this 1950s welfare state, and what's really massive is that the problems that that welfare state was designed to address have changed. So we have issues, you know, like loneliness, 2.8 million older people in Britain not speaking to somebody a week, bigger killer than smoking. We have issues, just the aging issues, we have environmental issues, we have a whole range of issues that weren't there when we designed our welfare state. And the most important thing is, I think you were alluding to this in the introduction, it's not just that those issues weren't there, it's that the nature of them is really different. So to give you an example, diabetes. In Britain, diabetes takes up 80% of hospital bed expenditure. And I don't know, we've got a total crisis in our national health spending in Britain. But the point is, of course, that once you're in hospital, what can be done for you? Nothing. Maybe you can have an amputation. I mean, diabetes is something that hopefully we can prevent, and where we can't prevent, we need to manage at home, in our communities. So it's that in order to kind of work with these, we can't have a sort of 19th century idea of a kind of transactional system where there's a cure at the end of it. It's much more about living with things and all of us making change in our lives in a completely different way. We say it's about, in the case of diabetes, motivation, not medicine. But it's also about doing those things with somebody there to support us. It isn't just being left on our own to do that. But it means that the systems we've got, they simply can't engage with a different culture that is needed for the very different nature of the problems. The second thing is, and I think this is probably different here because you're much more far-sighted than we are, but we have a crisis of care in Britain. What happened when we designed our welfare state was that care was privatised. Care was basically given to women and it disappeared behind the front door. You'll take care of your children. We still have terrible childcare in Britain, and you'll take care of your older people. And what's happened, of course, is that women have gone out into the workforce, and also families have become much more mobile. And most of our work is about caring for people. Most of the welfare ultimately is about caring for people, and nobody really thought how that would be done within our systems. And then the third thing is about poverty. So I think that the nature of poverty is also really different. There's somebody called Gösta Esping Andersen who might actually be Danish. Is he Danish? He's Scandinavian. Swedish. So I mean, I think that his work, which looks at welfare systems across Europe, is really important in identifying how the nature of poverty has changed. It is still material, but it's also emotional. It's about whether you belong, whether you have the right relationships. And I think the current way we think about welfare systems can't engage with that, which is such a critical issue, for instance, in the families that I've talked about. And then I think, just to finally end, is that there's 3 reasons why this can also happen. So one is that intellectually, scientifically, philosophically, we understand relationships in a way we never did in the 1950s. So we have psi disciplines, you know, which have grown in popularity. We have neuroscience. We have people themselves seeking for different ways. You know, I mean, one of the really important things, I think, with our capability approach and measuring the capabilities is that this had resonance with our families. They also wanted to grow their own capabilities. And so we have a lot of intellectual knowledge about this that we didn't have, that we can now harness to our systems. We also have very different mode of production, which is technology. Our welfare systems are an industrial mode of production, the hospital being the best one. You know, I mean, the NHS is a fantastic, our health system, it's a distribution system for medicine, and then it's a production line of beds. But now we have technology, and we need to think completely differently about how, which is what we've tried to do in a small way, we can design new systems and support relationships in a way that wasn't possible in the 1970s, let's say, with these new systems of technology. But unfortunately, we're not doing that. Very often what we're doing in Britain is we're using technology to prop up the old models that don't work anymore. Like the last attempt to prop up old models has probably got technology. But this is a huge opportunity actually to make something else practical. Circle could not have survived in the 1970s, but it can today. And then the other thing is that connection between relationships and technology, which transforms business models and means that, you know, I never like to go out there and say our work is cheaper because I don't want to change the world because it's cheaper. I want to change the world because it's better. But the reality is that in Britain, we have less money, so it does also matter that our work is cheaper. Anyway, thank you so much for inviting me. I hope I haven't spoken too fast and too long.